Right. My name is Amal Rose. That's just my first name. There's a second name to that. But I'm not going to tell that because you'll probably struggle to say it. But if you are interested, do ask me after this. Uh, I work for Kier Transportation as a sustainability specialist. There's a lot of focus of whole life carbon in my role, alongside other things in sustainability. Um, But we've been trying to partner with One Click LCA for a long time, but we finally did this year, and yeah, hence I'm here to talk about the infrastructure elements, the infrastructure tools, etc. For context, that picture was taken 10 minutes before I got married. Look how happy I am. I'm still amped, by the way. Right. So yeah, I'm here to talk about the journey to net zero infrastructure design and a spotlight on past 2080. Now, I had a bit of scare this morning because I decided to, so I'm traveling from Gloucester. I decided to use public transport to get here to London, which is a reliable form of transport these days. But so the trains did run on time, even though it costed more than the return flight that I'm taking to Turkey next month. It did run on time, but the bus did not. So I went to the bus stop near my place, got there 10 minutes before the bus. It never arrived. Went to another stop, never arrived. The next best option, went home, tried to book an Uber, by the way, never arrived. Got in my car, drive away. So as I was driving away, when I went into the first bus stop, there was a little kid next to me. So this whole process took about 30 minutes. He's still there, waiting for that 8 o'clock bus, which never arrived. But yeah, as I went past them, so I live about 3.5, 4 miles away from the train station. So generally it takes me about 10, 15 minutes. Took me 45 minutes today. Traffic, construction, all the sort of things going on at the road. Now the reason I say that is that to signify the fact that we need investment in infrastructure and quick investment. A lot of money really needs to go into the sector. So if I move on to the agenda today, what I'll be taking you guys through, we'll talk about net zero infrastructure, what it is, how can it be achieved, what role design plays in that, and how design could accelerate that process. The role of past 2080, what Kier Transportation is doing to achieve net zero in infrastructure, and the role One Click LCA has in it. So, is that working? Oh yeah. So what is net zero? Can anyone here tell me what net zero is? What's your definition of net zero? Does anyone have an answer? Right, okay, stand silence. So, well, at least for me, and generally in Kier, our sort of definition is, although there are different definitions available, net zero is basically achieved when a project, a program, a company reduce emissions as much as possible. Generally 90%, but as people who work in the industry, you know how hard that is. But yeah, generally do everything possible to reduce emission to the least as possible and offset or capture the remaining residual emissions. So that's how net zero is achieved. Now, why do we need net zero in infrastructure? Obviously, I'm speaking to the wrong audience here on why do we need net zero. But to signify a couple of things you might be already aware of, this graph here in the right-hand corner stating the fact that last year in 2023, we sort of got to that 1.5 degree Celsius warming and consistently remained there. Obviously, that's being fueled by the El Nino effect that has been going on in last year. But still, we breached that goal we set in the Paris Climate Agreement, which frankly should have been a bigger news, but it is not, which is fine. Now, this graph is from a study conducted by PwC. And as you can see, it is talking about the amount of reduction per year required to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius, or to limit global warming to 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius. And as you can see, to achieve 1.5, we need to reduce emissions every year by 17%, which is a big number to achieve. Now, this graph, you might be familiar with that. If people in here who have dealt with past 2080, you might be familiar with that. So if I skip a couple of slides, we'll get to this, but right. So it's very similar to these graphs here, where there is a there is a significance on early action. Basically, you're trying to act early so that you could reduce carbon in the earlier stages, mainly because the impact or the effect you can have in reducing carbon sort of decreases as the stage of construction progresses. So applying a similar sort of thinking, if we go back to that graph, that's what's happening here as well, where we need to be doing more. If we do more at an earlier stages, we only need to do very less here. But obviously, we are at a stage where we need to do more to have a bigger impact and reduce carbon and achieve net zero. Right, if I move on to the next slide then. So if we take the UK context then, 75% of UK emissions are predominantly from the infrastructure sector, the roads we have, the power industry, the buildings in the country. So it is a really key sector where we need to reduce emissions, and also investment. Nothing can be achieved without investment. So a recent study found out that at least 40 billion pounds need to be invested per year into the sector for the country to achieve its 2050 net zero target, if it were to achieve it. So that's the problem. The problem is to reduce carbon, and for that we need to achieve net zero. And infrastructure plays a key role in the UK achieving net zero and the whole world achieving net zero. So we need to achieve that. Another way to think about it is we are unhealthy. We are overweight. Not us. We all look beautiful here, but using a weird analogy here, but the whole world is unhealthy. It's overweight. There's too much carbon there. Or if I were to refer to that analogy, there's too much fat in it. So how could we reduce that? So if it were us to reduce fat, to decrease weight, we go on a diet. And for the world, they need to be doing this sort of thing. Now this is a non-exhaustive list. There are unlimited solutions we could be doing, but I've just picked out a few which, at least in my mind, is significant. So clear targets. I generally find it very hard to drive thinking within infrastructure projects to reduce emissions or introduce sustainable solutions. Because every time you go in there with an innovative product, innovative design, the question you're going to get back is, why waste the time, why waste the money, why waste the effort, if it's not for an actual cause. But if we somehow manage to set clear targets in projects, that easily gets attention, and people generally like numbers. So if it's written into a contract saying, right, we are building this road, we need to reduce emissions of, well, while we build it, we need it to reduce emissions by 30%. Now that makes it much more interesting and challenging, and that drives engagement. So clear targets, circular economy, personally, what I believe is the best solution to reduce emissions. You're using less materials, you're causing less harm to the environment, you're also generating different economies. I think there is a study that has estimated that circular economy could be generating a social value worth up to 4.5 billion pounds. So it is a key solution there. Then nature-based solutions. We all deal with nature-based solutions. Now, there is a lot of debate going on in the industry in terms of their effectiveness. But again, one of the best solutions out there, because you're using less material and you're trying to integrate infrastructure with nature, reducing the harm on biodiversity. Another one, renewable energy. So the biggest source of emissions within projects, within infrastructure projects, well, not the biggest, but a core part of its emissions is from energy required to operate the plant, our machines, our sites, compound offices. As soon as we switch that to renewable, much of that A5 emissions, those A0 emissions, really come down. And also if you take the core elements used in construction, such as cement or steel, or asphalt for that matter, a lot of their embodied carbon comes from the energy used to manufacture those products in the first place. So yeah, renewable energy is a key element. Then we'll get on to net zero design and life cycle assessments later on in the presentation. But a great tool. Then low carbon materials, which is a new fashion term that has been banged about a lot in the industry now. But there are really good, genuinely good low carbon materials that are coming into the market now with the market forces pushing for more sustainable products. In Kier Transportation, we run a working group called the Materials and Innovation Group, where we get suppliers across the country and from Europe as well, who come in and showcase the products they are trying to launch to the market, which is going to be a key to this journey. Then innovation, policy, and investment, obviously key to anything. If you're trying to do anything, that's a requirement. But unfortunately, it takes time. It's a hard process. There's a lot of people involved, so it takes time to effectively implement the right policy, drive the right innovation, get the investment in the right places. Carbon capture, the kryptonite, but again, very expensive to do. Unfortunately, the world is still not at the place where we could actually suck out all the carbon. If that was the case, any of us wouldn't have any jobs, but there we are. Right, so I talked about the sort of diet we need to take. Then another thing we have to do would be to exercise, to do cardio, to do weightlifting. So that could be, most of those weightlifting could be, or most of those exercise could be done in design. Because if you think back to the initial graph I talked about, where we need to act early. That can be done, that is done in design. And that's where net zero design comes into place, life cycle assessment comes into place. So what are the sort of main exercise we could do? So hotspot analysis, brilliant tool that we could do. Identifying key hotspots within the infrastructure we are constructing at an early stage so that we could focus our resources and efforts at the right place. Now, once we've done a hotspot analysis, we can look for alternative materials with better embodied carbon, low carbon materials, which we talked about earlier. Then moving on to identify other sources, so local sources and alternative sources of transportation. I recently worked on a HS2 scheme. Well, I say recently, that was last year. Now, we required a lot of aggregates to be brought on site for that project. So we initially, the early designers sort of identified a quarry about 60 kilometers away. But during detailed design, we somehow managed to find a local supplier, which was just about 10 kilometers away from where we required. Now that change from 60 to 10 kilometers saved about 10,000 tons of carbon. So that's one of the biggest impact we could have in design, where we are able to identify these sort of local sources of materials which significantly reduce that A1 to A5 element of carbon. Then generative design, which was talked about earlier by my colleagues. We could look into apply a lot of different principles of integrating nature-based solutions, apply circular economy, designing for deconstruction, where we get to look at different stages. So life cycle assessment in design, the main benefit of what I see is we get to see the impacts across the whole life cycle of the project, where so if I were to choose a material, I could look at what impact it will create during, maintaining that material. What impact will it have when during the end of life of it? So that way, because traditionally what I found with low carbon materials is that, we found a material with very low embodied carbon. It's a great product. Will solve all our problems. It comes from a local place, so it's pretty much low A1 to A4. However, it requires a lot of maintenance because it hasn't been tested properly. So and there are a lot of instances where you lower the A1 to A3, but you would find the B1 to B7 or the C1 to C4 elements of the life cycle going up. But having this perspective where we could look at all these stages helps to tackle carbon at a very, very, very early stage. Right. Now, so we talked about the sort of diet we need to take, and also the exercises we need to do. Combine them together, we need a weight loss plan. And that is what is sort of past 2080 is. It's effectively a plan we could use in our journey to net zero. Now, when I started in the industry, there was a 2016 version of the standard, which was updated last year to the 2023 version. There aren't much changes. One of the notable changes were the changes in the carbon reduction hierarchy. So we used to have this build nothing, build less, build clever, which I preferred, this hierarchy. This changed into the avoid, switch, improve hierarchy principle, which traditionally is trying to say the same story. What it says is you take early action as soon as possible, before you get the shovel in the ground. Start thinking about carbon, engage with your people, engage with the right people, so that you have, and so essentially you have greater ability during those stages to reduce carbon. Other notable changes or other things to shout about the standard would be the collaboration and the leadership element. So I'm not sure if all of you have been through a past 2080 audit, but when I've been through a couple, one of the key, well, the audit kind of looks, is scheduled as a big set of interviews. So you would be interviewing all of your CEO to all the way down to your supply chain. So there's a series of interviews conducted during the verification. And what they're trying to see is, or what they're trying to look is for consistency in the messaging we are giving around carbon. Is the director and the person or the subcontractor working through our supply chain, do they have the similar sort of messaging around carbon within the company? And the standard promotes collaboration. It asks us to engage with all the suppliers, also the leaders, the clients, everyone involved in the project, and also pushes for strong leadership around carbon. Early carbon consideration we talked about. Now, other thing to note in the 2023 version is the systems thinking, where it's not looking at the project itself. So the standard, or when we go through the verification, what an auditor would look through, how the project is placed within the company and the whole carbon context of the industry. And in some cases, if we have taken into account how much carbon that is contributing to the whole UK's footprint as well. So it sort of promotes, what the standard is trying to do is to uniform or formalize the methodology we take in the infrastructure and the built environment sector to reduce carbon. Procurement integration. This has been slightly improved from the 2016 version, where there is a greater emphasis on engaging with the supply chain, and transparency, consistency, and standardization. So it's basically the standard is asking the projects to share targets with the supply chain so that they understand the impacts of their own actions as well. So yeah, it's pretty much a really good standard for anyone to follow in the built environment sector. Now, what Kier Transportation, which is the business unit from the wider Kier Group industry, we got verified or accredited to pass 2080 last year in November. So Kier Transportation as a business and Kier Group as a whole is now past 2080 verified. Now, the main thing about the verification is it's an annual verification. So it's not a thing where you get it and you know that the jobs are good and nobody leaves. You'd be verified every year and hold accountable to whatever you have said in the initial verification. So we have made a lot of commitments in terms of what we will be doing or what we will be implementing within the business to reduce carbon. So come next verification, we need to be showing evidence on how we will be delivering all of that, or how we have delivered it. Whole life carbon assessment in projects. So our Kier construction business are quite ahead of us in this journey. So they've managed to standardize carbon assessment in most of their design. They've worked with their designers in integrating that to their design process. We are taking a similar journey in transportation as well, working with our design team. So I'm part of the Kier design team, which is called Kier Design Solutions, where we try to integrate carbon assessment into our design process, so that it becomes a standard practice when we deliver infrastructure. Working with the supply chain, this has been going on for a while, but we have taken great strides in it. So we now offer free training to all of our colleagues within who works for Kier Transportation and and our contractors as well. Prioritizing innovation, as I said, we got multiple working groups within the company trying to collaborate within Kier and also with the industry to identify innovative products so that we could drive down emissions. Some recent achievements. So where I'm from, in Gloucester, there is the A417 missing link project happening, but applying the principles of past 2080 where possible, or trying to look into carbon from an early stages, we were able to reduce or achieve our carbon target of 35% reduction against the baseline in the project. Our A585 Windy Harbour major project was successfully delivered last month. And that project unfortunately did not have a carbon target, but we did overshoot or overachieve our biodiversity net gain target. So this is a staged process that we are trying to implement. So basically taking each stages of a construction project and trying to bring elements of carbon into it, so that from the very first stage, we got carbon within the contracts. We are talking to designers, we are talking to our supply chain about carbon as early as possible. So at the moment, we are going through the process of integrating these into our projects. Now we get on to projects at different stages. So in some instances, we would be getting at stage 3 and 4. In those instances, we try our best, or we're trying our best to ensure that these steps are carried out so that we could, go along this sort of train journey there. The key processes within this sort of carbon management process would be baselining, having a target, and obviously conducting an assessment. Because obviously numbers drive attention, and yeah, we need numbers to reduce. Then engagement, big key for us. So a lot of our engagement is run through Kier Transportation's One Planet approach. So if you look at the Kier website, there is a Building for Sustainable World approach. So that's the approach taken by the whole group, which then trickles down to the different divisions where they create their own version of it. So this is our approach. And we sort of integrate these two things and deliver sustainability within our projects. And yes, Kier Design Solutions, we are at the forefront of delivering this work within the transportation business, as I said, where design is key. Now, where One Click fits into this. So the first element in here where we need to be doing baselining, target, and assessment. That is being delivered via One Click. So we use the platform across a lot of our projects, including major projects, to get or to do the baselining and also to do the ongoing assessment through every stages. Now the process has been going well so far, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done because, as I said, the industry is also playing catch up. Our clients, say National Highways, Network Rail, or Transport for London for that matter, are all playing catch up in this process. What we are trying to do is work with them to understand their process and find uniformity in that, and also offer the software solution as well, where we could actually come in and do these sort of assessments in early design for them. So yeah, that's how that's been delivered, and yeah, hopefully you got a feel for how net zero infrastructure is being achieved. Obviously, there's a lot of management in it, but we can't achieve net zero without that sort of a streamlined carbon management process. So yeah, that's my presentation. If you have any questions, let me know.